What happens when a legendary actor refuses to play nice with a talk show host who thinks she can steamroll anyone? Well, you're about to witness one of the most explosive on-air meltdowns in daytime television history. Joy Behar thought she could corner Gary Oldman with her usual tactics, but she had no idea she was about to meet her match. By the end of this interview, Joy would storm off her own show, leaving millions of viewers stunned and her co-hosts scrambling to pick up the pieces. But before we dive into this incredible showdown, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you won't believe how this all went down. It started like any other Tuesday morning on The View. The studio buzzed with its typical pre-show energy as makeup artists put finishing touches on the hosts and producers ran through last-minute notes. Gary Oldman was scheduled to appear in the second segment to promote his latest film, a gritty drama about corruption in local politics. What should have been a routine promotional interview was about to become television gold. Joy Behar sat at her familiar spot at the table, coffee in hand, already armed with what she considered her killer questions. She had done her homework. Or so she thought. Gary Oldman's filmography was extensive, spanning decades of transformative performances. But Joy had zeroed in on something else entirely. She was fixated on some offhand comments Oldman had made months earlier in a British interview about the current state of American politics. As the show returned from commercial break, Whoopi Goldberg smoothly introduced their guest. Gary Oldman walked onto the set with his characteristic quiet confidence, waving to the audience before taking his seat. The applause was warm and genuine. The audience knew they were in the presence of true talent. "Gary Oldman, everyone," Whoopi announced as the applause died down. "Thank you so much for being here. We're excited to talk about your new film." "Thank you for having me," Oldman replied in his measured English accent. "It's a pleasure to be here." The conversation started innocuously enough. Whoopi asked about his preparation for the role, and Oldman spoke eloquently about the research he had done, the people he had met, and the importance of telling authentic stories about power and corruption. The other hosts chimed in with thoughtful questions about his process and the film's relevance to current events. Then Joy Behar leaned forward, that familiar glint in her eye that regular viewers knew meant trouble was brewing. "Gary, I have to ask you about something," Joy began, her voice taking on that prosecutorial tone she reserved for guests she wanted to corner. "A few months ago, you made some comments about American voters that I found pretty concerning. You suggested that people here don't really understand the issues they're voting on." The studio fell silent. Oldman's expression remained neutral, but those who knew him well might have noticed the slight tightening around his eyes. "I'm not sure I follow," Oldman replied calmly. "Could you be more specific about what comments you're referring to?" Joy pulled out a printed sheet of paper, clearly prepared for this moment. "You said, and I quote, that American political discourse has become so polarized that voters on both sides often make decisions based on emotion rather than facts. That sounds pretty condescending to me." Oldman took a measured pause before responding. "Well, Joy, if you're going to quote me, perhaps you should provide the full context. That interview was about the responsibility of artists to present complex issues in nuanced ways, not to make sweeping judgments about entire populations. But you did say it," Joy pressed, her voice rising slightly. "You can't deny that." "I'm not denying anything," Oldman replied, his tone remaining steady but with an edge creeping in. "What I'm suggesting is that taking a small portion of a much longer conversation and presenting it without context is exactly the kind of thing that contributes to the problem you seem concerned about." The tension in the studio was palpable. The other hosts exchanged glances, unsure whether to jump in or let this play out. The audience sensed something significant was happening. Joy wasn't backing down. "Context or no context, Gary, you're a guest in our country, promoting your movies, making your money here, and then you go overseas and criticize how Americans think and vote. Don't you think that's a little hypocritical?" That's when Gary Oldman's demeanor shifted. The politeness remained, but there was steel underneath now. A guest in your country? Oldman repeated slowly. I've paid more in taxes to this country than most people see in a lifetime. I've raised my children here, built a life here, contributed to communities here. The idea that having a British accent makes me some kind of outsider looking in is not just wrong. It's frankly insulting. The audience began to murmur. Some were clearly uncomfortable with Joy's line of questioning, while others seemed energized by the conflict. Joy realized she had struck a nerve, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. I'm not saying you're not welcome here, Gary. I'm saying maybe you should be a little more grateful for the opportunities America has given you, instead of criticizing the people who made your success possible. Grateful? Oldman's voice remained controlled, but the word carried weight. Joy. Gratitude doesn't require silence. In fact, I'd argue that real gratitude, the kind that comes from genuinely caring about a place and its people, sometimes requires asking difficult questions and having uncomfortable conversations. Whoopi tried to interject. Maybe we should talk about the film. But Joy was on a roll now, convinced she had the moral high ground. That's a nice way to put it, Gary. But what I heard was you talking down to American voters like we're all too stupid to understand what's going on in our own country. Gary Oldman set down the water glass he had been holding and looked directly at Joy. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but carried clearly throughout the studio. Joy. I've sat through a lot of interviews in my career. I've been asked provocative questions, challenging questions, even hostile questions. But what you're doing right now isn't journalism. It's not even good television. You've taken a thoughtful conversation about the role of media in democracy, stripped it of all context, and turned it into a weapon to attack a guest on your show. If anyone here is talking down to people, it's you, talking down to your own audience by assuming they can't handle nuance or complexity. The silence that followed Gary Oldman's measured rebuke was deafening. Joy Behar's face flushed red, her carefully applied makeup unable to hide the anger bubbling beneath the surface. She wasn't used to being called out so eloquently, so completely, and certainly not on her own show. Excuse me? Joy's voice cracked slightly as she tried to regain her composure. I think you're being a little dramatic here, Gary. I'm just asking legitimate questions. Gary leaned back slightly, his expression remaining calm but his eyes never leaving Joy's face. Dramatic? Joy, you've accused me of being ungrateful for working in America, suggested I'm some kind of foreign interloper, criticizing your voters, and misrepresented my words to create a controversy that didn't exist. If that's your definition of legitimate journalism, then perhaps we have very different standards. The other hosts were squirming in their seats. No, Joy interrupted sharply, her famous temper now fully unleashed. I can speak for myself. Thank you very much. And what I'm saying, Gary, is that you seem to have a real problem with Americans having opinions about your opinions. Isn't that exactly the kind of elitist attitude that people are tired of? Oldman's eyebrows raised slightly, and for the first time since the confrontation began, there was a hint of amusement in his expression. Elitist? Joy. You're sitting on a national television show, interrupting your guest, misquoting him, and then attacking him for defending himself. If we're talking about elitist behavior, perhaps you should look in a mirror. The audience gasped audibly. Several people could be heard murmuring in agreement. Joy's face went from red to purple. How dare you, she hissed, leaning forward aggressively. You come on our show, our platform, and have the nerve to lecture me about journalism? I've been doing this longer than you've been making movies in this country. And yet, Oldman replied with devastating calm, experience doesn't seem to have translated into wisdom or professionalism. Joy shot up from her chair so violently that it rolled backward several feet. That's it! I'm not going to sit here and be insulted by someone who thinks his British accent makes him better than everyone else. Joy, please. Whoopi tried to intervene, but Joy was beyond reason now. No, Whoopi. This is exactly what's wrong with Hollywood and the media. These people come here, make millions off American audiences, and then turn around and act like we're beneath them. I'm sick of it. Gary Oldman remained seated, his hands folded calmly in his lap. Joy. At no point have I suggested that anyone is beneath me. What I have suggested is that you're behaving unprofessionally, and your response is proving my point rather spectacularly. Unprofessionally? Joy's voice was now approaching a shriek. You want to see unprofessional? Unprofessional is coming on a talk show and acting like you're too good to answer direct questions. I've answered every question you've asked. Oldman replied evenly. What I haven't done is allow you to misrepresent my words or attack my character without responding. If that makes you uncomfortable, perhaps the problem isn't with my answers. Sarah Haynes jumped in desperately. Maybe we should take a commercial break. No, Joy shouted, spinning to face her colleague. We're not taking a break. I want everyone to see this. I want them to see how these Hollywood elites really feel about regular Americans. Gary Oldman finally stood up, his full height and presence commanding the stage in a way that made Joy's theatrics look even more unhinged by comparison. Joy, he said, his voice cutting through her hysteria like a blade. I've spent my entire career playing characters, studying human nature, understanding what drives people to behave the way they do. Right now, I'm watching someone who's so desperate to be right, so terrified of being challenged, that she's willing to embarrass herself and her colleagues on national television, rather than admit she made a mistake. I didn't make any mistake, Joy screamed, spittle flying from her mouth. The mistake was booking you on this show in the first place. Perhaps, Oldman agreed quietly, but not for the reasons you think. The calm way he delivered that line seemed to break something inside Joy. She turned to the producers standing off camera. Get him out of here, she demanded, pointing at Oldman like he was some kind of criminal. I'm not doing this anymore. Either he goes, or I go. Whoopi stood up now, trying to restore some semblance of order. Joy, let's just calm down and... Don't tell me to calm down, Joy whirled on her longtime colleague. Are you taking his side too? Is everyone here going to let this man come on our show and disrespect me? Gary Oldman spoke quietly to one of the producers. I think it's best if I leave. This clearly isn't productive for anyone. Oh, so now you're the victim? Joy laughed bitterly. Run away, Gary. Go back to your British friends and tell them how awful the Americans were to you. I'm sure they'll love that story. Oldman paused in gathering his things and looked directly at Joy one final time. Joy, I came here to talk about a film that deals with corruption and the abuse of power. I had no idea I'd be getting such a vivid demonstration of both. That final comment sent Joy over the edge completely. Get out! Get out! She screamed, her voice echoing through the studio. Security! I want him removed from the building. The absurdity of calling security on a guest for the crime of defending himself wasn't lost on anyone in the studio. The audience began to boo, though it wasn't clear if they were booing Oldman's treatment or Joy's behavior. Gary Oldman walked calmly toward the exit, stopping only to shake hands with Whoopi and the other hosts, pointedly ignoring Joy's continued ranting. This is exactly what's wrong with this country. Joy continued shouting, even as Oldman disappeared backstage. No respect. No respect for the people who built this industry. Ana Navarro, who had remained silent throughout the entire exchange, finally spoke up. Joy, maybe you should. Maybe I should what? Joy spun around, her hair disheveled, her makeup smeared. Maybe I should apologize for standing up to someone who thinks he's better than us. The studio was in chaos. The audience was buzzing with confused chatter. The other hosts were looking at each other in bewilderment, and the producers were frantically trying to figure out how to salvage the show. Whoopi Goldberg stepped forward, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had navigated countless television crises. Joy, we need to get back to the show. We have a live audience. We have cameras rolling. But Joy was beyond caring about the show, the audience, or her professional reputation. Her chest was heaving, her hands shaking with rage as she stared at the spot where Gary Oldman had been sitting just moments before. "I can't do this anymore," Joy said, her voice suddenly dropping to an eerie whisper that was somehow more unsettling than her screaming had been. "I can't sit here and pretend that what just happened was okay." Sarah Haynes tried to approach her colleague. "Joy, honey, let's just take a breath and—" "Don't!" Joy held up her hand like a stop sign. "Don't try to manage me right now, Sarah. I know what everyone is thinking. I know you all think I went too far. I know what everyone is thinking. Don't try to manage me. Too far." The studio fell silent, except for the low murmur of the confused audience. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every moment of what was becoming the most dramatic meltdown in daytime television history. Ana Navarro cleared her throat carefully. "Joy, maybe we should discuss this privately." Joy let out a harsh laugh that echoed through the studio. "Privately? There's nothing private about this, Anna. Everyone just watched me get humiliated by a guest on my own show. There's no coming back from that." "You weren't humiliated," Sunny Hostin said gently. "It was just a heated discussion that got out of hand." "A heated discussion?" Joy's voice rose again. "Sunny, that man just called me unprofessional on national television. He basically said I don't know how to do my job. And you know what? Maybe he's right." The admission hung in the air like a bomb that hadn't quite exploded yet. The other hosts exchanged worried glances. Whoopi moved closer to Joy, speaking in the soothing tone she usually reserved for the most difficult guests. "Joy, you've been doing this job brilliantly for years. One difficult interview doesn't change that, doesn't it?" Joy's eyes were wild now, darting between her colleagues and the audience. "Because I'm standing here, and I realize I don't even remember why I was so angry at him. What was I trying to prove? That I could bully someone into agreeing with me? That I could humiliate a respected actor because I didn't like something he said months ago in a completely different context?" The raw honesty of the moment was startling. Joy Behar, known for her quick wit and sharp tongue, was falling apart in real time. "I've become everything I used to hate about television," she continued, her voice breaking slightly. "I've become the person who attacks people for sport, who twists words to create drama, who cares more about winning an argument than having an actual conversation." The audience was completely silent now, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Even the most seasoned television viewers had never seen anything quite like this. Joy looked directly into the camera, her makeup streaked, her hair a mess, but her eyes suddenly clear and focused. "You know what? Gary Oldman was right about everything. I am unprofessional. I did misrepresent his words. I did attack him for no good reason except that I thought I could get away with it." She paused, taking a shuddering breath. "Well, I can't get away with it anymore. Not with myself." Whoopi reached out to touch Joy's shoulder, but Joy stepped back. "I'm done," Joy said simply. "I'm done with this show. I'm done with this chair. I'm done pretending that what we do here most days is anything more than glorified gossip and manufactured outrage." "Joy, you're upset." Anna tried to reason with her. "Let's go backstage. Take a few minutes." "No," Joy said firmly, beginning to unhook her microphone. "There's nothing backstage that's going to change what just happened out here. There's nothing that's going to change the fact that I spent 20 minutes trying to destroy a man's reputation because I was too lazy to understand what he actually said." She pulled the microphone pack from her belt and set it on the table with a decisive click. "Ladies," she said, addressing her co-hosts with a formality that felt like a final goodbye. "It's been an honor working with all of you. But I can't sit at this table anymore knowing that I've become the kind of person who attacks people for having thoughtful opinions." Sunny stood up quickly. "Joy, please. Let's talk about this. You're making a decision in the heat of the moment." "Am I?" Joy asked. And, for the first time since the confrontation began, she seemed genuinely calm. Because it feels like the first clear decision I've made in years. She turned to face the audience directly, many of whom were now standing, unsure of what was happening, or how they were supposed to react. To everyone who's watched this show, who's supported me over the years, I apologize. You deserved better than what you just witnessed. You deserved a host who could have an intelligent conversation with a guest without turning it into a personal attack. She picked up her purse from beside her chair and started walking toward the exit. Whoopi called after her desperately, "Joy! Joy! Wait!" But Joy Behar didn't stop. She didn't look back. She walked off the set of The View with the same determination she had shown throughout her career. Except this time, she was walking away from everything she had built. The cameras kept rolling as the remaining hosts sat in stunned silence, looking at Joy's empty chair as if they couldn't quite believe what had just happened. Finally, Whoopi turned to the camera with the professionalism that had made her a legend. "We'll be right back," she said quietly, and the show cut to commercial. But everyone knew that when they came back, The View would never be the same again. Joy Behar had quit on live television, brought down not by scandal or controversy, but by a moment of brutal self-awareness triggered by a guest who refused to be bullied. The empty chair at the table would become one of the most talked-about images in television history, a reminder that sometimes the most dramatic exits come not from anger, but from the sudden, devastating clarity of seeing yourself exactly as you really are. So what do you think? Was Gary Oldman right to stand his ground? Or should he have just played along with Joy's line of questioning? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories from the world of television. The drama never stops, and neither do we.